Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of Unlimited Seating, featuring candid conversations with female role models in the workplace. My guest today, I'm very excited to announce, is Elisha Herrmann. And hey Elisha, thank you so much for taking the time to join us at Unlimited Seating.
Oh, I'm very excited and honored to be your guest today. Thank you for hosting.
Awesome. Hey Elisha, I usually read out a bio of my guests, but I've gone through your profile and I really love it, and I'm sure our listeners would really love it as well. If you can share a bit about yourself.
I think it's very strange to be on the end of myself as the topic. I normally talk about in the tech world, so I'll try to do justice to myself on this topic. I started out in IT as a functional analyst in the SAP space. I graduated from the University of Cincinnati with an information systems degree and was fortunate enough to be part of an SAP program that they had embedded in their program, and started the week after I had graduated in December. What I do want to call out, though, for those who may or may not be considering an IT career, is that I didn't intend to be in IT at all. I checked the wrong box when I transferred schools, and I meant to check international business. And once I started getting into the program, it felt right. It felt good, and I just continued with it. And I'm very lucky and glad that I did that. So my career at Cow Brands was first. I was a functional analyst for SAP in the supply chain space. So I did, if anybody knows the SAP terms, MM, PM, QM, all of the M's, but really working on business process within materials management, within production, within planning, within quality, and starting to understand the world of product supply and also on the demand side. I was very fortunate at that time to go through a couple of implementations of modules within SAP and also a system consolidation. So Jergens is, the hand cream Biore, that company, but they were bought by Cow Brands years ago, decades ago, but they just started consolidating systems and merging into one brand. And I worked with a lot of different consultants, and I thought to myself, these consultants are so smart. How do they know all of these things, right? And I decided that I wanted to go into consulting after that because I wanted to learn at that pace and understand and really be able to add value. And also, the monetary compensation was also a driver. So I went to Intelligence, and I'll bring this up because Intelligence is an SAP-focused consulting firm. They are owned by NTT Data, so they are NTT Data now. I worked in an application managed service group. So I worked on SAP as a consultant, but I didn't travel at that time, which was important to me because I had a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old at that time. So I didn't want to travel. I wanted to still learn at that pace, but not be too much on the go because, still relatively new into this motherhood thing. But I just loved it. I ended up working more in supply chain, doing more end-to-end, I would say overall business strategy. So learning from how you procure the materials to production all the way to the sales and the customer end and, financial reporting and whatnot there. But I did towards the end, after a few years, I was traveling quite a bit to just different customer sites for their own implementations. I started also learning global trade, which was more of a niche area at the time. I really started to enjoy that space. And because I was doing a lot of traveling anyway, I was approached by KPMG that had a pretty advanced and actually the largest global trade firm in the world. But they had just acquired a technology arm. They acquired a company and they wanted to round out their technology services within global trade space. So I was approached to join that team, and it just made sense from the different types of clientele that they had and also the different types of services that they could provide from an automation standpoint. So they had, they weren't SAP specific. They were agnostic. They also had much larger teams in terms of, blockchain and AI and some of the things that I wanted to gain skills in. So I moved there. And I loved it. The people are great, but it got to a point with the travel that it just really wasn't sustainable for me. I think the last year I had 165 days away, and a lot of those, in Europe and Asia. And I also wanted to kind of focus on different skills. So an opportunity with Bayer came up to be a digital innovation partner in their product supply team, so of crop science as well. And I just jumped on that opportunity. I wanted to really get in and learn about, drones and IoT and smart factories, and really how I could make a difference and learn through that channel. And so there, I just changed jobs a couple weeks ago, and very fortunate to have the opportunity to join Navasite. It's back in consulting. It's a conglomerate of different services that now roll into Navasite, which really can offer the whole breadth of services from cloud installation and migration through application consulting and SAP, JDE, and for those types of things. So I was brought on board to use all of my previous skills to start and lead up their digital transformation office. It's been newly formed, so I'm just really excited to kind of take what I've learned and put that forward. And just a little bit about myself. I feel like I'm rambling, but I have a husband of a while now. Yeah. And I have daughters, 15, 11, and then 10 months old. So we have quite the range of children, and it's been, interesting being a working parent, but also a working mother. And so, yeah, I've enjoyed every bit of it. I'm a concert junkie. I go to concerts all the time. I love being outside. I played soccer since I was 4. I still play a little bit now, on indoor teams with people my age, so we don't get hurt. Working out, and then also supporting the community in different ways that I can. So I'm on the board of Sweet Cheeks Diaper Bank. We supply diapers to different children around our community through partner agencies, and then wherever else I can donate my time and treasures.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing, Elisha. Really great story and journey there. Actually, didn't tell you. I've actually been to the Sweet Cheeks. Sorry, my watch is acting up. It's trying to talk to me. I've been to the Sweet Cheeks Diaper Bank. I went with my daughter for a volunteering event once from GE, packing diapers away for giving it to the different homes. So yeah, it was a very good experience. I was very happy I could share it with my daughter as well. A very good organization, like really good intent, something that you really don't think of as a huge need, but it's an actual really strong need, and diapers can be expensive. So hey, thanks for sharing your kind of walking us through your career journey. I know it's not easy to put so many years of experience into 2 to 3 minutes, but I think you did really well. So the one thing I get from what you shared, Elisha, you studied something, right? You studied IT, then you went into SAP. From there, you kind of really dug deep into supply chain. You went the consulting route, and then you also picked up the global trade and regulatory kind of learning, right? You actually consciously spent some time learning it. Were these things that, and then you went on to study like blockchain, new technologies, and your roles as well changed accordingly. How did you kind of just know? Was it something that just came by chance, or did you consciously think about, hey, how do I keep learning and expanding my expertise?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of passion for things or wanting to learn more. So the opportunity that was there, I just didn't want to pass it up. So especially the move consulting, that was very good skills, and I just like to problem solve, and IT has just really helped me be able to do that. But also from the regulatory standpoint, I was just very curious. Why does it take so long? Why is it so hard to import? I just wanted to know. And so I just surrounded myself with the different projects and the different team members and the different companies that were able to show me that. And when new technologies are coming out, I'm a lover of learning. Every morning I get up and just read different articles. I want to know what's going on in the economy, what's going on in tech. As the new technologies kept coming out, I wanted to be able to understand them and how they could really apply to solve business challenges. And so I just naturally kind of gravitated that way and really raised my hand. Can I take that project? Can I run with that? And consciously with Bayer, I guess I can say this, but for that role, it was over a 20% pay cut, but it was still worth it to me because I wanted to just learn the skills and understand how it works. So it's kind of conscious, but also luck. I think you need to have a little bit of that, but also people that believe in you, that you can spread and learn and grow for those different opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's really important, right? And one of the things that you mentioned as you were walking through some of the roles you took were, you decided to shift into, I think it was consulting, and you said the compensation was also an important aspect. And I think as women, sometimes we shy away from speaking about compensation. We're like, I've never heard anyone saying that was also a deciding factor, right? We say it's the learning, it's the experience, and what it will bring to me. But it's a very real and practical aspect, right? And I feel men will not shy away from saying that, hey, I got paid 30% more, because it's almost a sign of, hey, their worth and their value and the expertise they're bringing. So I really like how that was a deciding, one of the different criteria that you considered when you decided to make a shift to consulting. So another thing, even as you did all of these different learnings, right, in different fields, do you seek out mentors and people who can give you that guidance? Has that been part of your experience?
It has been, and I do think that I've been just really fortunate to meet some wonderful people in all of the roles that I've held. I've had champions, I've had mentors, and cheerleaders and advocates in all of the different companies, and I've been exposed to different types of leadership opportunities or learning cohorts within my different careers as well. So I would say at Intelligence, I still talk to my mentor. I would consider her my mentor. She was a former CIO that came over, and she's still guiding me. I still say, what do you think about this or this? These just different topics, and I really appreciate her feedback throughout the years. But also, that was the first time that I was exposed to international leadership classes at Intelligence, and really expanding my scope of what is possible and what is out there from, not only career standpoint, but just from a person aspect. That was the first time I was traveling internationally, and I just fell in love with it because you can learn just so much, and I appreciate all of the different cultures that I come across. And so they've definitely been a factor. And I think that I've sought out those different mentors. I think it does grow organically, but I think it has to be conscious, because as career focused people, we oftentimes don't say, hey, I'm going to take out the time to be a mentor, because a mentor you're invested, right? Like, you are talking to that person every day. You understand their ways of working. You can fit them in with places that you think there's a lot of opportunity. So it's not something you should take lightly. So I have sought out those, but I've also been lucky enough to have, someone gravitate towards me that was, able to shepherd me through some of those different, I would say, political aspects, or, you represent me in some of those higher level conversations for promotions or for projects, etc.
It's a really strong point, right? The right mentors, sometimes mentors who can also be advocates and sponsors. And when it's a woman supporting and advocating, and I think the whole concept of why I started Unlimited Seating was about having those female role models, right? You want to be able to see somebody else there, because that's how you can say that, hey, she can do it, I can do it too, right? I think that's a genuine challenge in many workplaces today, right? Where is that sponsor and advocate, and how do I get access to that person? So this is a great example. And I think you said it's great when it happens organically, and I think it's important that once you have that connect, say worked on a project, you did really well, you present it to the senior person, that's kind of a foot in the door. But if you find that there is some sort of connect, keep that going, right? Don't just have the 2 meetings and drop it.
I can share with you with the woman that I still talk to. Her name's Cheryl Bogan-Schutz. She and I had a client together, and we traveled on the longest flight at the time to Malaysia. And we just bonded, and we went through the project, and there were some highs and some lows, but we really connected and have been able to, hopefully we found value from one another. But I definitely have, she's definitely kind of shepherded me through and always there if I have questions to bounce off of her, and I know her grandkids and all of those things. So I think once you have that relationship, it doesn't need to end. If you change roles, still continue that going forward.
So tell me about I've always been curious about consulting, right? Definitely something I'd like to explore sometime. But how did you find it, right? You are maybe especially initially when you just went into the role, maybe 1 or 2 years in the consultant role, you were traveling everywhere. I did see one of your posts where you said, hey, many of the kind of board meetings and other rooms that you went to, you were at many times the only woman in the room. What was that experience like?
It was definitely challenging. I will say for one particular project, I worked for a large electronics firm that had a logistics arm to it. And it was in Korea. So I traveled to Korea several times. And when it came to present at the final board meeting, I was the nominee from our team to do the presentation. And aside from the interpreter, I was the only female in the room, presenting to both the C-suites of the logistics arm and the overall company. And it's very intimidating. You don't see a familiar face, especially, a completely different culture. I can't read the room to know, if they're understanding what I'm presenting or what the feedback is, especially with just different cultures, the way that they provide feedback is different, and I might not be attuned to it. So it's very challenging. I do try to take extra steps to prepare in that case, just to take some of the stress and anxiety off of me when I know I'm going to be in that situation. I think over the course of many years of finding myself in that position, I've kind of eased into it, and it's not as, I don't want to say threatening, but it's not as, jarring to be in that sort of now. But at first it's just really intimidating, and you're not sure if you're doing the right thing or not, but you kind of just have to say, if you were nominated to do this, then someone believes that you're the right person for this role. So go get it.
Yeah. No, that's a great way of looking at it, and not forgetting, because I think that does happen sometimes, right? And like you said, at the start, when you initially find yourself the only woman in the room, there is a bit of, I think, I wouldn't call it self-doubt, but you are a bit second guessing yourself a bit. Hey, should I say this? Should I not say this? And I think it's important to just speak up, but do so in your own style. I think we're sometimes forced to think that, hey, we see a lot of male leaders, right, as role models. I think for me in my career, it's always my image of the leader is a guy. But then it's a guy who's like super confident, in your face, commanding the whole conversation, and you have everyone eating out of his hands, right? So when it changes, you want to be that person, but then you're like, hey, that's not me being genuine to myself. I think you learn over a period of time that, hey, it's okay to be yourself, because like you said, you're there, you've proven yourself, and you're there because you're meant to be there.
Yeah, I think okay, I don't want to generalize it, but I've definitely had imposter syndrome. Should I be here? But most of the time, the answer is yes. And
Yes.
it's a growing opportunity. So, and to your point, the way I've also seen leadership, I've been lucky enough to see some women, and especially at KPMG in leadership, had mentors that are part of the global national, KPMG, not just the individual function structure. So I've been fortunate enough in that aspect, but for, like my own practice there, it was just that a very charismatic guy that commands the room.
Yes.
Especially as partners in a consulting firm or leaders in a company, they are used to doing that. And I feel like I've been talked over many times, not just by leaders, but by anyone at the table that felt, maybe it's okay just to talk over. She's the only female in the room. What I have to say is more important. And just saying, just to myself saying, no, that's not right. You will jump in when the time is right. I'd like to make it concise, reiterate it, and then spin it back in my own terms to get my point across. But I think it takes a lot more thought as a female to make sure that you're not ruffling feathers and really land the message the way that the receiver wants to hear it, as opposed to just speaking off of the cuff. I think there's a lot more that goes into that, especially as you're dealing with international type of projects because of all the different cultures. So It's a very different effort.
Absolutely. It's, again, it's been my experience, and I think the more I read like the McKinsey reports and different articles, that's when you kind of realize that, hey, the experiences that I'm thinking of and the way that I'm feeling, it's not just me. It's actually a fact, right? I mean, there are some sort of biases, and that kind of just gets displayed in behavior from time to time.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things I read as well, which I think me and a lot of my female colleagues will agree, is there is a feeling that, hey, I have to run twice as hard to get to the same distance, right? Has that been your experience, or have you felt differently, or is something you don't notice?
No, I definitely do notice it. I do think that, and I think some of it is my personality, I will say, maybe I just would hard what, I'm not really sure, but I do think that it has been harder to earn the trust or to earn the ear or to be the one to get into those positions of, projects or promotions or, and it's the little things too, like I mentioned, thinking so hard of how to phrase emails so they're not offensive or so you'll get to what you want at the end. And I don't think that the other gender has to do that. So I think there is a lot more work that goes into it. And I'm also fortunate. My husband is just amazing. We are partners, but I know that, there are still things that fall on me that my husband wouldn't, deal with, like, the carpool text chains. So I do think just for us because of what we've done traditionally. And, I think we're slowly breaking down all of these traditions, but it's taking time. So I think there's more effort spent just to get to the same spot.
Yeah, my husband's the same, right? We try to split things up. He does spend a lot of time with my daughter, helping her with homework, and he's very patient. That's something that I can't do. So he does a lot, but sometimes it's like I feel my brain is occupied with very little things, like you said, right? Hey, school, pick up, drop off. I need to enroll for this. I need to pay for her like taekwondo lessons, and sometimes I just reflect at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my god, my brain is sometimes filled with useless tasks and to-do lists.
I totally agree.
So how was COVID for you? I know you took a new job as well, around probably the time COVID was really getting into its strength period in the US. How was COVID for you? Did you find it really exhausting? You had kids probably homeschooling.
Yes. It was very strange. So just irony at its finest. So because I had traditionally been traveling quite a bit before this role out, my husband had actually chosen to take a role that was remote. and he was just gearing up. I think he started the week before COVID hit. So not only was he home now, permanently working, I'm home, which we've never been home so much before, and the kids are home. So it took, I think, quite of a bit of an adjustment, and just like figure out who's doing what roles, because we haven't been in this position before. And then me starting a new job and trying to navigate and figure out where do I fit in this organization? How do I add value? What are the things that I know? It was pretty stressful at first, but I honestly think because we had more time, it was just a good time for us to reflect after we kind of got into a groove, or just, relax a little bit in a way that we hadn't ever been able to do before, right? With one person gone and one person home. But from a work standpoint, I'm fortunate enough, from the consulting, that I've worked from anywhere. So me coming home, it was not an adjustment whatsoever, because I'd worked from home, since honestly for, for 15 years or so. So like on and off, just different periods. So for me, adjustment like it was for my husband, because he was used to going into the office every day, maybe having those 30 minutes to, separate himself from his personal and professional work. But I think for us, it was really just kind of a good time to reconnect and, enjoy one another's company.
And here you have a baby again as you're starting a new role.
It's been definitely, something where it's, definitely a blessing. It wasn't something that was in our plan, but I think we just have a different approach now. Our oldest is 15, and we see how fast everything can go. And even though it's a lot more challenging to do things, it's also a lot more rewarding, I think, because we understand that it's such a fleeting time. So we're really just trying to soak everything up and really not sweat, the small stuff. Just that'll be fine. Let's just focus on what, helps us out internally, and everything else will be okay.
Yeah, I don't know how you have time for it, Elisha. You have 2 girls, and then you have the baby. You're starting a new role. I know that you, I've seen a few of your videos, and I listened to one, I think, the podcast as well. So you do all of these different engagements outside of your work hours, right, or your core working day, and you are putting yourself out there as a thought leader, right? Is that something you do consciously, or are these opportunities that come and so you're seizing and taking them? And I looked at your LinkedIn profile as well, right? You are putting a lot of your inner thoughts, your passion, and your interests out there. So again, I know that takes a lot of time as well. How do you go about your week and your day?
Yes. So the first thing is I get up extraordinarily early. Normally the baby wakes up at 4:40 normally to eat. So I'll feed her and then I'll start my day. But prior to the baby, I would get up around 5 and work out at 5:30. So I really like to get that in, because that sort of workout is something that I do for me, and it kind of sets my whole day into a great, just like a happy attitude. So that's kind of important to me. And then I really try to prioritize what needs to be done and when, and really chunk out my day to make sure that I'm focused on what really needs to be focused on. And there might be some noise over here, but I'll get to that when I get to that. I'm also extraordinarily flexible, so I don't feel that I have a start and an end to my day. I really just get what needs to be done at the appropriate time. So that I think is sometimes frustrating to someone like my husband, who likes, work hours, but I've just over time kind of gone with it because there's things that need to be done at certain times. From a thought leadership standpoint, it has kind of evolved over time. I would say in the consulting space, because of some of the niche marketing or niche areas, there was a need for marketing around it. So I kind of fell into some of the thought leadership honestly, and really just worked with others to kind of hone those skills and get the right messages out. And then from all of my leadership development, especially at KPMG, is all about personal branding and messaging, and really how you can keep your brand, right? Because roles may change, but your brand is still your brand. So really making sure that you have it represent you. So a lot of it is very intentional, and I try to, I don't know, I don't have like a plan of when I'm going to post things. They just kind of come up. I always say yes to things that are local. So like speaking at a local university, or I do a Women in Technology conference every year, GE part of it, for women in high school. So I always try to say yes to those things and figure it out, because I want to give back, because I want other females to see people in the role, a technologist or in STEM careers, and say, maybe I can do that too. So those types of things are important to me, but also part of it was part of the job. So it just kind of evolved, naturally here. Not always, but I do like to share that in first grade, I went to a remedial reading class because I was thought that I couldn't read, but I was too shy to speak out loud of what I'm reading. So turns out I was just a fine reader. I was just too shy. And so coming from there to where I am now has definitely been learned a little bit, or a lot forced, but just really thinking that this is part of your career and this is part of what's required for the career. So just get out. I've been sharing more personal stuff lately, which is different to me, but it seems like it resonates with a lot of people. So I thought, well, I can be a little bit afraid, but still go through with it.
I was gonna say, I looked at your posts some time back, right, and they seem very genuine, right? It's not like you talk a lot about new technologies, which I know is your subject of interest and expertise, but then you're also sharing a lot about, I know you shared about how to work through your priorities and get all your work done. You did share a bit about your experience as a working woman, as a consultant. So there is a lot of personal bits in there as well. And coming to the female role models topic, it's so important. Sometimes we only showcase, hey, this person did this at work, won this award, went here and crushed it. But it's important to see that, hey, there's a real person behind these accomplishments. So thank you for doing that. I mean, it's a great, it's great role model behavior, I think.
Oh, no, I really appreciate that. I actually just had a discussion with my friend who is a therapist, but I explained it to her because sometimes I think we as females, try to figure out our place in the world and kind of put people into buckets. Well, I'm a foodie or I'm not a foodie. But I feel like as soon as you do that, like you kind of put a wall up in between like what you are and what you aren't, and that's not relatable. So I really want to share, I'm not crushing it every day. I have challenges, and these are some of the ways that I try to work through them, and I don't get it right every time. I definitely fail, but hopefully that I'm learning from that and not making that mistake again. So I hope that I'm more relatable.
You are definitely. Coming through, you did share, hey, sometimes things don't work out. Do you feel, and I've read a couple of articles, right, where it says that women sometimes going through their career, they don't get a lot of good feedback, right? Good, actionable feedback. And I think I've personally as well, I've had some really great bosses give me great feedback. It takes you aback a bit in the first time you hear it, but then you reflect and you say, okay, there is something that I need to take away and do here. But then I've also had a few of those managers who are always like, hey, you're doing really great. And you sit there very happily in the meeting, but then you get out and you're like, what is it that is great, right? What do I know that I need to keep doing? And what is it that I'm sure that there is something that I need to work on? And when you don't get that actionable feedback, then you're not doing something obviously later on. And that sometimes comes and bites you when people are thinking of the next role, right?
Yes.
How has it been for you?
Oh, I've definitely experienced that. Definitely experienced that. And I think too, so one of the ways that I tried to handle that, because I wasn't getting feedback, is to really ask.
Mhm.
A lot of times I don't want to ask because maybe I don't want the feedback, because maybe I'm so great at receiving it, and it takes a little bit to like soak in before I can say, yeah, that is something that I need to reflect on and do a little bit better. I have received that and had the same sort of thing come back and bite me, that, well, you weren't doing XYZ, or you could have done this, or we expected you to do this, when I hadn't asked either, right? Everything's good until it's not, I think, is it. So those are some lessons learned about how communication needs to go both ways. I think as females, we are a little bit less timid, because that seems very bold and maybe not something that we're supposed to be doing, but everyone else is. So I tried to, this was actually something that my daughter and I talked through recently. She is on a high school soccer team, and I just said, well, maybe you should ask the coach, or maybe the feedback, or see. She's like, no, I can't do that. And I said, well, everyone else is. They are. Just because that's not comfortable to you doesn't mean that everyone else isn't getting actual feedback, or sharing things, or asking questions. So it's not that you're doing anything wrong by doing that. It just puts you maybe on the level playing field, even if it doesn't feel comfortable for you. So you don't have to, but I just want to make you aware that this does happen. And I think unless someone's kind of telling you these things, that you don't even realize that they're options.
Yes, and it's a really good way to think about it. And the people who ask, I think, are definitely viewed as, hey, this person really wants to take on feedback, wants to do better. And even if there's 3 items of feedback, and then you take one and show that you're working on it, I think it really helps. So I like that, ask for feedback. That's really good advice. It might feel a bit, strange when you receive it, but still ask. Don't accept that, hey, everything is great.
100%.
Yeah, it took me some time to learn that. Okay, so let's talk a bit about growing. You obviously, every role that you take is a step up over the last one, right? Is it something challenging to say that, hey, I want to be considered for it, right? And maybe you're not seen as there is a tendency not, if I look at the data, there's 100 men promoted, there's 86 women promoted. And so it looks like the natural tendency when you have it is to give the challenging role to a man. Maybe it doesn't happen consciously, but that's what the data tells us. And how do you go about going, say, hey, I want to do a bigger role next, and this is why? What are some tips and learnings from your experience?
Yeah, I think I have relied a lot on mentors to understand what is the right way to go about that. Who needs to hear that message? What I need to do within the work that I'm currently doing to be considered for that? Because I think a lot of it is just raising your hand. Even for dinners house, ask what we have a few options for dinner, and I ask, and don't say anything. I always tell my girls, no voice, no choice. So that it works out in my favor for dinners, but sometimes in the workplace it doesn't work out so well, because they might not know that you want to be considered for those roles. So one, making sure that someone is aware. There's the awareness that you want to be considered and you want to grow, and instead of just thinking that they automatically know. They assume, as I'm working hard or staying late or doing all these extra things, that I want to grow, because that might not be the case. So awareness, and then just making sure you are tactful about it, right? You don't want to I don't know, send some message to somebody higher than you're supposed to, and then really the person who's making the decision is, you know, a little bit upset that you didn't notify them first. So really kind of research, how do I get to the next role? What do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? So it's a conscious effort, and I know that all of these things take time and energy, but I think that there's a return on investment when you kind of take the time to say, hey, where do I want to be now or in a few years, and what does that look like? You know, there might not always be that, you know, that project that gets you directly there, but you can always hop around and get the different skills. So if you need 3 skills, it might take 3 different projects, but find them all and make your case. And that's the other thing. I didn't learn this until I was passed up a few times for different roles, that you have to make your own case. So I really started throughout the year kind of keeping metrics on myself about, you know, my project deliverables, feedback that I got from clients, just kind of a different, like, hey, here's my resume from this year of why I gave value to the customer. And really just, I don't want to call it self-promoting, but also it's really just saying I should be considered. This is what I did, you know.
Yeah, and that's sometimes hard, right? I think it's harder for women to say, I did this, I achieved this, I won this. It is definitely hard, but it has to be done. As just a couple of days back, one of the folks in my team, he was going for an interview for a different role, and he was a bit worried about the interview. He said, hey, you know, it's really hard for me to sell myself like this, and it seems really unnecessary because people know me and they know my work. And what I had to tell him is, hey, the person you're speaking to doesn't know everything about you. They're not seeing you in action every day. So this is just you communicating what strengths are you getting to the job. So don't think of it as a selling. It's sharing more about yourself, just like you said, right? Telling people who you are and giving them the ammunition they need to help you get the job.
Yeah, I really like that. More of educating than, you know, selling.
Because selling is, especially for people, I can say for myself, you know, just from a culture standpoint as well, it's about, hey, don't keep talking about what you did and what you achieved, but you just have to get that information out.
Yeah.
So, Elisha, what's your leadership style? Has it evolved over the years?
I think it has. I think when you first come into a role where you have people under you, honestly, I feel like pour that first person, because I figuring out, you know, what it means to be leader, what it means to provide feedback, or what it means to advocate, or, you know, even, you know, what your learning style is, you know, all of those things. And I think my style it's really laid back, because I think everyone has a lot to contribute, and I really want to make sure that they give them their whole selves and you know, play to their strengths, but also kind of provide feedback, because we all have different roles, we have objectives, so we need to make sure that our strengths and skills go to those types of objectives, but really just to try more of like guardrails than
actually like telling them what to do.
Than telling, yeah, exactly. Unless they request, you know, assistance, I'll help. But it's more of I think everybody has unique perspectives. I think everybody has their own story to tell, and I would like to try to bring that out rather than dictate what's happening. And sometimes it hasn't worked out because that's not the type of leadership that the person needs. They like to have more of those combined boxes, but it's figuring out how you relate to other people. And my biggest thing is, you know, by example. So I don't really expect anything out of anyone that I wouldn't do. Sometimes I probably expect a little bit less, because I think that I just have that mindset that might be a little over the top. You know, anyone that I think that runs a marathon has a sort of mindset that might be a little over the top. So I try to just check myself as well. Like, is that reasonable? But yeah, it's pretty laid back. And then also just, I like to give back wherever I can.
Yeah. And in your mind, Elisha, of course, your experience and then your own personal experience, as well as what you've seen in the organizations you've worked with, what do you think are the top one or two things we need to be thinking about or doing so there's not just one Elisha or two Elishas in the organization, right? There's more women rising up the ranks and getting to that top level leadership.
Yes, I think that it has to be the culture and the mindset, and honestly seeing people there. One of the reasons that I switched roles is because of my new boss, and she was just named the Chief Transformation Officer. But when I look across the company portfolio and everyone that I'm working with, it's pretty mixed in terms of gender. So I think top things that needs to happen is seeing oneself in that role, and then having those people around that realize the value of the diversity. So not just women, but everything needs to be a lot more diverse. So I guess in there are the two things, right? The one is just seeing yourself in the role, and then the second thing is having diversity, because you just come up with so much better everything when there are different opinions. I think if I put it in technical terms, right, if we're using machine learning and AI, those are people programming it that have a lifetime of bias, and they don't realize they have the bias because it's themselves, but someone else growing up has a completely different experience and would provide feedback in a different way. So even in our technology there's bias, but it's kind of, so it's really kind of breaking that apart and valuing people's past experiences and letting them bring that forward into the workplace.
Yeah, very well said. I think definitely a lot of action and thought needed, not just from a gender diversity aspect, but overall. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I'll just to understand from you a bit more, Elisha, before we wrap, right? What's next? You've had a very strong career so far. Are you consciously planning, hey, what's ahead for me? Of course, you just started at Naviside, but on from there.
Yes, I am consciously planning. So this role, I think I mentioned earlier, I think it allows me to use a lot of the different skill sets that I've gained over the years. I don't think that my career has been linear, just in the different skill sets that I've used. So I'm happy to be able to bring all of the supply chain experience, the global trade, the risk, the compliance, the consulting aspect, but also house aspects, really understanding how technology can solve problems and help everyone, in their daily lives. So my goal, my passion is really being a problem solver, and I'm hoping that I can use what I've learned so far to do that. And right now it's at enterprise level, but hopefully at some point it will be more at a personal level, and having my own startup at some point. But right now I'm just really enjoying saying, hey, we can make a difference. I like to solve problems, and I just happen to be able to use technology to do it.
Right, just the nature of the problem and the size of the problem keeps changing.
Yep.
Right. Okay. I know, Elisha, you have to go, but I think this was a really good conversation. Some of the insights that you shared, just around the way you went about learning different things, adding to your expertise, that's a strong learning. And just where you said, hey, getting a mentor, keeping that connection, and then consciously asking for feedback and actioning it. I love what you said about saying yes, right? You have opportunities that come up, you're going for it. It's not just for your own career growth or your brand. You're doing it because you want to make a difference. You want to give young girls an example as well to look forward to. So some really powerful insights there, and really love what you shared about, hey, if you want the next role, do some prep work, right? Go and talk to the right people. Because things are not just going to land in your lap. And I feel nobody ever says, hey, you are the right person for it. you have to tell them you are the right person for it. So it's some really good insights there, Elisha. And I just want to say once again, congrats on the new role. And I've also seen that you were one of the finalists for the 2021 was the Vision Awards.
Yeah, the John F. Barrett Innovation Award. So the ceremony's coming up. So fingers crossed I win. But it just being nominated was, a big feather in my cap. And I'm glad somebody else noticed, some of the work that I was able to do.
All the best. Wishing you all the best for it. I think it's just such a great honor to be nominated.
Yes. For sure.
Thank you for all that you're doing. You're a true role model. So just thanks for putting yourself out there. Like you said, bringing your whole self to your LinkedIn profile as well. It's really good to see. Very refreshing.
Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate the dialogue. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, thanks, Elisha.